Hello everyone, my name is Lizette Lagunas. Welcome to my Week 7 discussion board, where I will be going a bit more into depth about conflict management, dispute resolution, design, and training for the workplace. I will also be discussing a conflict that can occur in the public sector and how to deal with it using a dispute resolution design and what level of intervention would best fit the conflict. And let's get started. In the first journal by Melissa C. Feeney and John A. Davidson, the authors go into a deeper look on when conflict begins to occur and how the lack of information and transparency between various parties can actually sprout a bigger conflict. That is why they conducted a research where they focused solely on the validity of the conflict resolution model by focusing on training in the workplace. And this helped because they used a specific design principle for a scenario that would involve lawmaking. And it was really interesting to see that the results of the research were actually focused on higher amounts of cooperation and increased brainstorming. And many of the principles that were used in order to conduct this research were very similar to the design principles on page 163. So that was really interesting from this article. They also found huge increases in brainstorming and cooperation, but they didn't see any differences in listening and assertiveness on managers' behalves, which kind of makes sense because this research was done using people that had not previously worked together. So I feel like those are things that you work on as time goes by, and it's more of a group effort. So on page, I think it's 165, there's that decide whether to serve in the role of an expert or a facilitator. And I think that you grow into that role depending on the circumstances. And I think this article really does put that into perspective one more time. My next resource is actually a YouTube video by Dr. Jeannie Byrne, in which she discusses 6 ways in order to approach conflict management. And she suggests an acronym, STABN, I believe it is. She discusses the way in which we usually avoid conflict and how it has now been such a taboo topic, but it is actually part of life. And I think after this course and reading this text, I have actually been able to accept that conflict is part of life and that we almost do anything to avoid it, but we should really embrace conflict and tackle conflict, and it actually helps build on our relationships. And that's what the video talks about as well. And it gives some pretty non-aggressive steps to resolve the issues, and it helps you feel more empowered in the workplace. So it breaks down how to discuss the conflict, to choose the best time to tackle the conflict, how to approach it in an amicable way. It's a really good video, I thought, and it actually goes hand in hand with understanding that conflict can come from feeling pressured and feeling that you have to produce more and work faster and you don't have the resources, and then you become angry and frustrated. And many conflicts come from within. The way that you perceive a conflict comes from within. So I think on page 185, I read that whenever these elements of conflict come about, people are only trying to protect themselves from harm when approaching somebody, and conflict can kind of sprout that anger. And that is why these issues should be addressed in conflict management education and in training programs. So that is also what is discussed in this video. So that is why I thought it was really interesting. My third resource that I found is an article by Allison Doyle, and it pretty much gives definitions, skills, lists, and examples of conflict management. And it was super, super interesting to see how strong conflict management skills are and how big of an advantage they are in most positions. And although we read that in this chapter, the author really focuses on how there needs to be a level of emotional intelligence, and for any program manager, the dispute system design is only an attempt to create like a collaborative process. And although it helps address complaints and focuses on managing disputes, it also helps you see the skills that are needed to fully be capable of dealing with these complaints and the differences on a daily basis. And it can also lead to a creative problem solving and more effective management skills when working together. So that is why I thought this article was really important. And it also discusses something that is discussed on page 188, which is that training should be perceived as an intervention rather than just a means of informing or providing skills. And in this article, it talks about how our skills should be used as that as well. They should be used as a sense of just becoming in, and program managers should always be the middleman or kind of have no biases. So that was really interesting as well. My last resource is an article posted on the Harvard University Daily blog site, and it was actually written about a month ago, and it focused on dispute resolution strategies for managing like internal conflicts in organizations. And it talks about as well about like the lawsuits and the strategic like partners threatening to fire or hire a competitor, and then the consumer lawsuits. And it's really important to discuss the low cost of managing internal conflicts. So, and it was interesting to see how not dealing with conflicts leads to these bigger disputes, how cost inefficient it can be, and how by using the design principles on page 163, we can avoid all of this in the workplace. And finally, one of the biggest conflicts that the Department of Community Services at a local city has is the lack of communication amongst management and employees at different centers, programs, or locations. There is really no correlation between the training in one center. They might do a little to no work and sit there all day on a computer, just waiting until they have to leave. While at another center, the employees might need to create an entire class, as well as lead the class, take payments, make flyers. And when staff is sent from one center to another, there's a huge conflict because some of them feel overworked and some of them feel bored. So what I would suggest to facilitate the discussion would be a facilitated discussion amongst managers and have the department director come in as a mediator, which would make the level of intervention a bit more formal. And also conflict management skills trainings that should be required for managers, because the issue can fully be tackled by preventing this conflict to escalate and there be more of a division between managers and employees. During the training, I would definitely have the managers have a non-defensive behavior and just listening to why the employees are just sitting there all day or why they are doing so much of the work, so they find a middle ground. I would have the group identify like the cultural differences within each center or each program and what is fueling that lack of communication or that difference in the work that they're providing, and have the leaders present also the director present like a problem solving model or what they think is the best option, and have the managers agree on it, disagree on it, or add on to it. So that is my presentation for this week. I will see you guys next week.